The morning sun poured through the tall windows of the university lecture hall, casting long golden rectangles across the rows of wooden desks where students sat with their tablets and notebooks. It was a Tuesday like any other, or so everyone believed when they walked through those doors that morning. Katie Morgan sat in her usual spot in the third row, her brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her glasses slightly crooked on her nose, as she focused on the equations Professor Harold Green was writing on the whiteboard. She was 22 years old, a doctoral candidate in theoretical physics, and she had been surviving on coffee and determination for the past 3 weeks while working on her thesis. The lecture hall held about 60 students that morning, most of them half asleep or scrolling through their phones beneath their desks. Professor Green was a patient man in his late 50s, with thinning gray hair and a habit of clearing his throat every few minutes. And his voice had a gentle quality that could either captivate or lull, depending on one's interest in quantum mechanics. Katie was captivated. She always had been, ever since she was a little girl lying on her back in the Montana wilderness, staring up at the stars and wondering what secrets they held. Now, she was close to unlocking some of those secrets, or at least she would be if she could finish her thesis on time. Her best friend, Samantha Lou, sat 2 seats away, struggling to stay awake. Sam was a computer science major, with a sharp wit and a talent for hacking that she only used for good, mostly. The two had been roommates since freshman year, and had developed the kind of friendship that could survive anything. Or so they thought. The first sign that something was wrong came as a low vibration that everyone felt in their bones. Students looked up from their phones and notebooks, confusion spreading across their faces as the vibration grew stronger. The windows began to rattle, and Professor Green stopped mid-sentence, his marker frozen against the whiteboard. "What on earth is that?" someone whispered from the back row. Katie looked up at the ceiling, her scientific mind already racing through possibilities. Earthquake was her first thought, but the vibration was too rhythmic, too controlled, almost like something was approaching from above. Then the ceiling exploded. Students screamed and dove beneath their desks as chunks of concrete and metal rained down. Katie threw herself sideways, pulling Sam down with her as debris crashed around them. Dust filled the air, and for a moment all she could hear was chaos. When she looked up, there was a hole in the ceiling the size of a car, and through that hole descended a column of brilliant blue light that hurt her eyes to look at directly. Within that light, a figure was materializing, growing more solid with each passing second. The figure was nearly 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and armor that looked like it was made from black glass. His skin had a copper tone to it, almost metallic, and his eyes glowed like molten gold in the dusty air. When he fully materialized and stepped onto the floor of the lecture hall, the ground cracked beneath his weight. "I am General Kethvorak of the Vethkai Dominion," the creature announced, his voice booming through the hall, even though his mouth movements did not match the English words. Some kind of translator technology, Katie realized, her mind still working even as her heart pounded. Students were crying. Some had fled through the emergency exits, while others remained frozen in terror. Professor Green had collapsed into his chair, his face white as paper. Only Katie remained standing, her eyes fixed on the alien general with an intensity that bordered on defiance. "Your species has been observed and judged," Kethvorak continued, his golden eyes sweeping across the room with contempt. "You are weak, primitive, and unworthy of the resources you waste on this small planet. However, the Dominion is not without honor. We offer you one chance to prove your worth." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You have 1 solar cycle, what you call 24 hours, to present your greatest warrior. This champion will face me in single combat. If your champion wins, your planet will be spared. If your champion loses, or if no champion is presented, this world will be cleansed of your species." The silence that followed was absolute. Katie's mind was racing. She looked at the alien general, really looked at him, taking in every detail with the analytical precision that had made her one of the top students in her program. She noticed the way his armor was constructed, the joints at the shoulders and knees where the plates met. She noticed how his eyes narrowed against the light from the windows. She noticed how he moved, powerful but deliberate, like someone accustomed to greater resistance. High-gravity world, she thought. His species evolved somewhere with much stronger gravity than Earth. That would make him incredibly strong, but potentially slower than his muscles would suggest. And those eyes, adapted for low light, probably sensitive to brightness. "Who speaks for this gathering?" Keth Vorak demanded. "Who will carry my message to your leaders?" Professor Green tried to stand, but his legs gave out. Other students were too terrified to move. Somewhere outside, alarms were beginning to wail. Katie pushed her glasses up on her nose, straightened her back, and stepped forward. "I will," she said, her voice calm and steady. The alien general turned his burning gaze upon her, and for a moment she felt the weight of countless conquered worlds pressing down on her shoulders. He was ancient, she realized, centuries old at least, and he had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. "You," he said, and there was amusement in his voice. "A small female child will speak for your species?" "I am not a child," Katie replied evenly. "I am a doctoral candidate in theoretical physics, and I understand more about the universe than you might expect. But that is not important right now. What is important is that you need a champion to fight." She took another step forward. "Send anyone," she said. "I will do it. I volunteer." The lecture hall went completely silent again. Even the distant alarms seemed to fade away. Sam was staring at her best friend with horror in her eyes, shaking her head frantically. Keth Vorak studied the small human woman before him. She barely reached his chest. She weighed perhaps a tenth of what he did, and she had no visible weapons or armor. Yet she stood before him without trembling, her eyes meeting his without flinching. Then he laughed. The sound was terrible, like metal grinding against metal, like the death screams of dying stars. It echoed through the ruined lecture hall, and made everyone except Katie cover their ears. "You mock me, little creature," he said, when his laughter finally subsided. "No," Katie said simply. "I am not mocking you. I am volunteering. Someone has to, and I do not see anyone else stepping forward, so I will be the one, unless you are afraid to fight someone my size." The amusement vanished from Keth Vorak's face, replaced by something that might have been curiosity. "You have courage," he admitted. "Foolish, pointless courage, but courage nonetheless. Very well, small human. I accept your challenge. 1 solar cycle from now, we shall meet in the arena of my choosing. Bring whatever weapons your primitive species can offer. It will not matter." He turned and began to rise back into the column of blue light. "Prepare yourself for death, little warrior," he called down as he ascended. "It is the only thing that awaits you." Then he was gone, and the light faded, leaving only a hole in the ceiling, and a room full of terrified people staring at Katie Morgan like she had lost her mind. Sam grabbed her arm. "Katie, what did you just do?" she whispered. Katie looked at her friend, then at the hole in the ceiling, then at the chaos around her. "I bought us time," she said quietly. "Now we just need to figure out how to use it." Within 2 hours of the aliens' departure, Katie Morgan found herself in a concrete room deep beneath a military installation she did not recognize. Men in uniforms had arrived at the university in black vehicles and taken her away without explanation. And now she sat at a metal table beneath harsh fluorescent lights, while serious-faced officials argued about what to do with her. The door opened and a man walked in. He was perhaps 60 years old, with silver hair cut short in military style, and eyes that had seen too much. His uniform identified him as General Lawrence Briggs of the United States Air Force, and when he sat down across from Katie, his expression was a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" he asked. "I volunteered to fight an alien general in single combat to save the human race," Katie replied calmly. "I think that is fairly clear." "You are a physics student," Briggs said, spreading his hands on the table. "You have no military training, no combat experience, and no business making decisions that affect the entire planet. With respect, General, when the alien arrived, there were 60 people in that room. 58 of them were too scared to move, and one had fainted. I was the only person willing to step forward. Would you have preferred no one volunteered?" Briggs rubbed his temples. He looked like a man who had not slept in days, which was probably true, given that alien ships had appeared in orbit around Earth just 48 hours ago. "We have trained soldiers," he said, "special forces operators, martial artists, the best fighters humanity can offer. Any one of them would be better suited for this." "Then send one of them," Katie said with a shrug. "I only volunteered because no one else would. If you have someone better, I will gladly step aside." The door opened again and a woman in a dark suit entered. She whispered something in Briggs's ear, and his expression changed from frustration to confusion. "It seems the Vethkai have clarified their terms," he said slowly. "They will only accept the champion who volunteered. They consider changing champions to be an act of cowardice, punishable by immediate planetary destruction." Katie absorbed this information with a nod. "Then it has to be me," she said. "So instead of arguing about it, perhaps you could help me prepare." Briggs stared at her for a long moment. "You are remarkably calm for someone who just received a death sentence," he observed. Katie leaned forward and for the first time there was fire in her eyes. "General Briggs, I grew up in rural Montana. My father was Daniel Morgan, former Special Forces, now deceased. From the time I could walk, he taught me how to survive. I can shoot, I can hunt, I can track, and I can fight. I chose to study physics because I find violence boring, not because I am incapable of it." "Absolutely." She sat back in her chair. "I also spent the last 2 hours in this room thinking. I have been analyzing everything I observed about that alien. His armor has weak points at the joints, particularly the shoulders and knees. His species evolved on a high-gravity world, which means he is strong, but probably slower than his size would suggest. His eyes are adapted for low-light conditions, which means bright light would cause him pain and temporary blindness." Briggs was silent for a moment. "How do you know about the high-gravity world?" he asked. "The way he moved," Katie explained. "Heavy, deliberate, like someone accustomed to resistance. On Earth, where gravity is lighter than what his body was designed for, he should be able to move faster. But his muscles and reflexes are calibrated for a different environment. It will take him a fraction of a second longer to adjust to each movement. That fraction of a second is an advantage I can use." For the first time, something like hope flickered in General Briggs' eyes. "What do you need?" he asked. Katie smiled. "A bow," she said. "Arrows, as many as you can give me. A mirror, a good quality one with a stable surface, and access to every piece of information you have gathered about the Vethkai." Over the next several hours, Katie immersed herself in research. Military intelligence had been studying the Vethkai ever since their ships appeared, and while information was limited, every scrap of data helped build a clearer picture. The Vethkai Dominion had conquered 17 worlds across the galaxy. They were a warrior species that valued strength and honor above all else. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's, but they considered it dishonorable to use advanced weapons in ritual combat. The plasma blade Keth-Thorak carried was traditional, almost ceremonial. Katie studied recordings of past Vethkai battles recovered from alien transmissions. She watched how their warriors moved, how they attacked, how they defended. She noticed patterns, habits, weaknesses that probably seemed invisible to others but were clear as day to her analytical mind. Late that night, Sam was finally allowed to visit. She found Katie in a training room, practicing with a compound bow that the military had provided. Arrow after arrow flew from the string, each one striking the target with perfect precision. "How are you doing this?" Sam asked, watching her friend with a mixture of awe and fear. "You never told me you could shoot like that." "My father taught me," Katie said without stopping. "I was putting arrows through targets at 200 yards by the time I was 15. I just never talked about it, because it was not important to who I wanted to be." She lowered the bow and turned to face her friend. "I wanted to be a scientist, Sam. I wanted to unlock the secrets of the universe through mathematics and observation. Violence was my past, not my future. But now," she paused, looking at the bow in her hands, "now the universe has decided that I need to be something else, at least for one day." Sam stepped forward and hugged her. "You are going to die," she whispered. "Katie, that thing is 8 feet tall and made of muscle. He has conquered planets. How can you possibly win?" Katie hugged her back. "Because he thinks I am weak," she said. "He thinks humans are primitive and worthless. He has already decided that he has won, and that arrogance is his greatest weakness. I do not need to be stronger than him, Sam. I just need to be smarter." She stepped back and picked up the mirror she had requested. It was about the size of a dinner plate, polished to a perfect shine. "The battle will take place at dawn," she explained. "I requested that specifically, and the Vethkai agreed because they thought it was some kind of human ritual. But the real reason is the sun. Their eyes cannot handle bright light. If I position myself correctly, I can blind him with reflected sunlight at the critical moment." Sam wiped tears from her eyes. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked. Katie looked at her friend with steady eyes. "Then I will die knowing I tried everything. But I do not intend to die, Sam. I intend to win. And then I intend to come back here and finish my thesis, because Professor Green will fail me if I miss another deadline." Despite everything, Sam laughed. "You are insane," she said. "Probably," Katie agreed. "But I am also the only hope humanity has right now, so insanity will have to do." Outside the window, the first hints of dawn were beginning to appear on the horizon. In just a few hours, Katie Morgan would step into an arena and face a creature that had destroyed civilizations. She was terrified. Of course she was. Only a fool would not be afraid. But fear was just another variable in the equation, and Katie Morgan had always been good at solving equations. The arena had appeared overnight in the Nevada desert, a massive circular structure of black alien metal that hummed with energy and cast strange shadows across the sand. It was perhaps 300 feet in diameter, with walls that rose 20 feet high, and seating that seemed to have grown from the metal itself. The Vethkai had constructed it with technology that humanity could not even begin to understand. Katie Morgan stood at the eastern gate, watching the sun rise over the desert mountains. She wore simple black tactical clothing, nothing fancy, nothing that would restrict her movement. In her hands she held her compound bow, and across her back was a quiver holding 20 arrows. Tucked into her belt was the mirror, her secret weapon. Around the arena, cameras broadcast to every corner of the world. This was the most watched event in human history. 3 billion people held their breath as a graduate student prepared to fight for the survival of their species. General Briggs stood beside her at the gate. "It is not too late to try negotiating," he said quietly. "We could—" "No," Katie interrupted. "The Vethkai do not respect negotiation. They respect strength. If I back down now, they will see humanity as cowards, and they will destroy us anyway. This is the only way." She looked at the old general and smiled. "Besides, I have a thesis due next month. I do not have time for a lengthy diplomatic process." Briggs shook his head in disbelief. "You are either the bravest person I have ever met, or the craziest." "Why not both?" Katie replied, and then the gate began to open. The arena floor was covered in fine sand. that shifted beneath her feet as she walked toward the center. The morning sun was low on the horizon, exactly where she needed it to be. She had planned everything down to the minute, calculating angles of light and shadow, trajectories and distances. At the opposite end of the arena, another gate opened, and General Keth-Vorak emerged. He looked even more terrifying in the daylight. His obsidian armor gleamed with an inner light, and in his hand he carried a weapon that made Katie's heart skip a beat. The plasma blade was nearly 6 feet long, crackling with energy that shifted between blue and white, hot enough to cut through steel like butter. The crowd, if you could call the thousands of Vethkai warriors watching from the stands a crowd, roared with approval as their general walked toward the center of the arena. They stomped their feet and beat their chests, creating a thunder that shook the very ground. Katie walked forward to meet him, her steps calm and measured. They stopped 10 feet apart, facing each other in the morning light. "You came," Keth-Vorak said, and there was genuine surprise in his voice. "I expected your leaders to send someone else, someone stronger. I did not expect them to sacrifice a child." "I am not a sacrifice," Katie replied. "I am your opponent, and I would appreciate it if you would stop calling me a child. I am 22 years old, which is an adult by my species standards." The alien general tilted his head, studying her. "You still do not tremble," he observed. "Even now, facing your death, you show no fear. Why?" "Because fear would not help me," Katie said simply. "Fear is just a chemical response, a signal from my brain telling me to run. But running is not an option, so I have chosen to ignore the signal." "That is what humans do. We feel fear, and then we act anyway. We call it courage." For a moment, something flickered in Keth-Vorak's golden eyes. "Interesting," he said. "Perhaps your species is not entirely without merit. But merit will not save you today, little human. Are you ready to die?" Katie shifted her stance, knocking an arrow to her bowstring. "Are you?" she asked. The signal sounded, a deep horn that echoed across the desert, and Keth-Vorak charged. He was fast, faster than Katie had expected, crossing the distance between them in heartbeats. His plasma blades swept through the air in a deadly arc aimed at her head. But Katie was not there. She had already moved, diving and rolling to the side, coming up running toward the eastern edge of the arena. Her heart was pounding now, fear flooding her system despite her earlier words, but she channeled that fear into speed, into focus. Keth-Vorak roared and pursued. Each of his steps covered 3 of hers, and he was gaining quickly. Katie could feel the heat of his plasma blade behind her, could hear the crackle of its energy. She reached her position, the exact spot she had calculated, where the rising sun would be directly behind her, and spun around, pulling the mirror from her belt. She angled it precisely. The concentrated beam of reflected sunlight struck Keth-Vorak directly in the eyes. The alien general screamed, a sound of pure agony that made the walls of the arena vibrate. He stumbled, his free hand flying to his face, his plasma blade swinging wildly as he tried to defend against an attack he could not see. Katie was already moving. Her first arrow flew from the bowstring before Keth-Vorak had even stopped screaming. It struck the joint at his right knee, piercing through the gap in his armor, with a sound like cracking ice. He crashed to one leg, still blinded, still flailing. Her second arrow found the shoulder joint of his sword arm. The plasma blade flickered and fell from his grip as the muscles controlling his arm stopped responding. But Keth-Vorak was not defeated yet. Even wounded, even blinded, he lunged toward her with his remaining arm, moving on pure instinct and centuries of combat experience. Katie dove backward, but she was not fast enough. His massive hand caught her leg and yanked her off her feet. She hit the sand hard, the breath driven from her lungs, her bow flying from her grip. He pulled her toward him, his vision beginning to clear, murder in his golden eyes. "Clever," he growled. Very clever, but cleverness will only carry you so far, little human. Katie struggled in his grip, her mind racing. Her bow was out of reach, and his hand was crushing her ankle. She could feel bones grinding together. Then she remembered the arrows in her quiver. She reached back, grabbed one, and drove it forward with every ounce of strength she possessed. The arrow pierced the gap in his throat armor, sliding between the plates and into the soft flesh beneath. Kethvorak's eyes went wide. His grip loosened. Katie scrambled backward, her injured ankle screaming in protest, and grabbed her bow. She knocked another arrow and aimed at the wounded general as he slowly sank to his knees. Golden blood, or whatever passed for blood in his species, dripped from his throat onto the sand. His breathing was labored, wet, failing. "Finish it," he rasped. "Claim your victory." Katie limped forward, arrows still drawn, and looked into the eyes of the creature who had threatened to destroy her entire world. "I do not want to kill you," she said quietly. "Killing is not who I am. I am a scientist, a student, someone who wants to understand the universe, not destroy it. But you gave me no choice." She lowered her bow. "Your wound is fatal," she continued. "I can see that. You will die within minutes. I will not insult you by pretending otherwise, but I want you to know that I take no pleasure in this. I only did what I had to do to protect my people." Kethvorak stared at her, and in his dying eyes there was something that had not been there before. Respect. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am Katie Morgan," she said. "I am a graduate student at Stanford University. I have a thesis due next month on quantum field theory. And I really did not have time for this." The alien general laughed, a wet, painful sound, and then his eyes closed for the final time. Katie stood over his body as the sun rose higher in the sky, her injured ankle throbbing, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Around her, the arena had fallen completely silent. Thousands of Vethkai warriors stared at the impossible scene before them. Their greatest general, conqueror of 17 worlds, had fallen to a small human woman with a bow and a mirror. Katie Morgan, graduate student, had just saved the world. She looked up at the alien crowd, raised her chin, and spoke in a voice that carried across the entire arena. "I believe this means you leave our planet alone." And then her legs gave out, and everything went dark. Katie woke up in a hospital bed with white sheets and the smell of antiseptic in the air. Machines beeped steadily beside her, and sunlight streamed through a window to her left. For a moment, she could not remember where she was or what had happened. Then it all came flooding back. The arena, the battle, the alien general bleeding golden blood onto the sand. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her left ankle, and she collapsed back onto the pillows with a gasp. "Easy there, champion," a familiar voice said. Sam was sitting in a chair beside the bed, looking exhausted but smiling. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying, but now there was relief in them, and something that might have been pride. "How long was I out?" Katie asked. 3 days, Sam replied. "You had a fractured ankle, 3 cracked ribs, and enough bruises to make you look like a modern art painting. The doctors said it was a miracle you survived the fight at all." Katie managed a weak laugh that turned into a wince when her ribs protested. "What happened after I passed out?" Sam leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement despite her exhaustion. "Katie, you are the most famous person on the planet. Every news channel in the world has been playing footage of the fight on repeat. 3 billion people watched you kill that alien. There are already statues being planned in 12 different countries." "I do not want statues," Katie muttered. "Too bad," Sam said. "You are a hero whether you like it or not. But that is not even the most interesting part. The Vethkai fleet did not attack after you won. They just sat there in orbit for 3 days, not doing anything. And then this morning, they sent a message." She pulled out her phone and showed Katie a news headline that read, "Alien Empire requests diplomatic meeting with human champion. Katie stared at the screen. They want to meet with me? Specifically with you, Sam confirmed. They refused to talk to any world leaders, any generals, any diplomats. They said they would only speak with the warrior who defeated Kethvorak. The entire United Nations is in an uproar, trying to figure out how to handle this. Before Katie could respond, the door opened, and General Briggs walked in, followed by two men in expensive suits, who had the look of politicians. "Miss Morgan," Briggs said, and there was genuine respect in his voice now. "I am glad to see you awake. These gentlemen are from the State Department. They would like to discuss the upcoming diplomatic meeting." Katie pushed herself up into a sitting position despite the pain. "The Vethkai want to talk to me," she said. "Fine, I will talk to them. But I am not a diplomat, and I am not going to pretend to be one. I will speak honestly, and whatever happens, happens." The politicians exchanged nervous glances. "Miss Morgan, this is a delicate situation," one of them began. "The future of humanity could depend on—" "The future of humanity depended on me 3 days ago when I was fighting an alien general with a bow and arrow," Katie interrupted. "I think I can handle a conversation. Now, if you will excuse me, I would like to get some rest before I have to save the world again." 1 week later, Katie found herself in Geneva, Switzerland, in a conference room filled with the most powerful people on Earth. Presidents and prime ministers sat in rows of chairs, surrounded by advisors and security personnel. At the front of the room was a single table with 2 chairs, one for Katie and one for the alien ambassador. She walked to her chair with only a slight limp, her ankle still healing beneath the brace hidden under her dress pants. She had refused to wear anything formal, opting instead for simple clothes that allowed her to move freely. Old habits died hard. The door at the far end of the room opened, and the Vethkai ambassador entered. This alien was different from Kethvorak. Smaller, older, with copper skin that had faded to a pale bronze, and eyes that held not fire, but ancient wisdom. He moved slowly, deliberately, each step carrying the weight of centuries. He sat across from Katie and studied her for a long moment. "You are smaller than I expected," he said finally. His translator rendered his words in a soft, almost musical tone. "I get that a lot," Katie replied. "I am Ambassador Vethlar of the High Council," he continued. "I have served the Dominion for 800 of your years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have witnessed the conquest of 17 worlds, and never in all that time have I seen what I saw in that arena." He leaned forward. "General Kethvorak was our greatest warrior. He had fought in over 300 single combats and never lost. He had crushed champions from species far more physically imposing than yours. And yet a small human female with primitive weapons brought him down in less than 5 minutes. How?" Katie considered her response carefully. "Your general made a mistake," she said. "He assumed that because I was small and weak-looking, I was not dangerous. He assumed that because my weapons were simple, they were inferior. He assumed that because my species was young, we were foolish. Every one of those assumptions was wrong." She met the ambassador's ancient eyes without flinching. "Humans are not the strongest species in the universe. We know that. We are not the fastest or the most technologically advanced. But we have something that I suspect many species lack. We adapt, we observe, we think, and when we are pushed into a corner, we fight with everything we have, using every advantage we can find." "You used the sun against him," Vethlar said. "You knew our eyes were sensitive to bright light." "I noticed how he squinted when he entered the lecture hall," Katie confirmed. "The windows were behind me, and he showed discomfort. It was a small detail, but small details win battles." The ambassador was silent for a long moment. "The High Council has debated for many days about what to do with your species," he said finally. "Some argued that we should destroy you despite the outcome of the combat. They fear what humans might become if allowed to grow and spread among the stars. A species that can produce warriors like you is a threat to the Dominion." Katie felt her heart rate increase. but kept her expression calm. "And what did the council decide?" "We decided that destroying you would be a waste," Vethlar replied. "You are not a species to be conquered. You are a species to be watched, studied, and perhaps, in time, befriended. Your capacity for adaptation, for observation, for turning weakness into strength, these are qualities the galaxy needs." He stood, and to the shock of everyone in the room, bowed deeply. "The Vethkai Dominion hereby withdraws its claim on Earth. Your world is under our protection now, not our threat. No species in the galaxy will harm you while we watch over your development." Katie stood as well, ignoring the pain in her ankle. "And what do you expect in return?" "Only time," the ambassador said. "Time to watch you grow, time to see what you become, time to understand how a species so young and so fragile can produce individuals of such remarkable capability." He straightened and looked at her with those ancient golden eyes. "You have given the Dominion something it has not experienced in millennia, Katie Morgan. You have given us hope that the universe still holds surprises. You have given us a reason to believe that strength is not the only virtue worth cultivating." He turned to address the assembled world leaders. "Treat this one well," he said. "She has saved your world not just through victory in combat, but through the example she has set. Let her remind you of what your species is capable of when it refuses to surrender to fear." And with that, Ambassador Vethlar walked out of the room, leaving behind a world forever changed. Katie stood at the table for a long moment, surrounded by the most powerful people on Earth, all of them staring at her like she was something they could not quite understand. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. "Miss Morgan," someone called. "Where are you going?" She paused at the door and looked back. "I have a thesis to finish," she said. "The universe can wait." 3 months had passed since the battle in the Nevada desert, and the world was still adjusting to the new reality. Alien ships orbited Earth as guardians rather than threats. Technology exchanges had begun between human scientists and Vethkai researchers, and humanity had taken its first stumbling steps onto the galactic stage. But in a lecture hall at Stanford University, none of that seemed to matter. Katie Morgan sat in the third row, her notebook open, her pen moving across the page, as Professor Harold Green explained the finer points of quantum entanglement. The ceiling had been repaired, the desks had been replaced, and life had returned to something resembling normal. Or as normal as it could be when the person sitting in the third row was the most famous human being alive. She had turned down interview requests from every major news network, declined offers to write books or star in movies about her life, and refused the dozen honorary degrees that various universities had tried to award her. All she wanted was to finish her thesis and get back to the work she loved. The other students treated her differently now, some with awe, some with fear, and some with a strange kind of reverence that made her uncomfortable. She was not a hero to them. She was something else, something beyond ordinary human experience. But Sam still treated her the same, which was a relief. "You know you have chalk dust on your face, right?" Sam whispered from 2 seats away. Katie wiped her cheek without looking up from her notes. "Better?" "Worse, actually. Now it is smeared." Katie sighed and continued writing. Some things never changed, and she was grateful for that. The lecture ended, and students began filing out. Katie gathered her things slowly, waiting for the crowd to thin. She had learned that leaving with everyone else meant being mobbed by people wanting photos or autographs, or just to touch the woman who had saved the world. Professor Green approached her desk as the last students departed. "Miss Morgan," he said, and there was warmth in his voice that had not been there before, "I wanted to let you know that your thesis defense has been scheduled for next month. The committee is very eager to hear your presentation." "Thank you, Professor," Katie replied. "I will be ready." Green hesitated, then sat down in the seat next to her. "May I ask you something personal?" Katie nodded. When that alien appeared in this very room 3 months ago, you did not hesitate. You stepped forward while everyone else, myself included, was paralyzed with fear. How did you do that? Katie thought about the question for a moment. I was scared, she admitted. More scared than I have ever been in my life. But I realized that fear was not going to help anyone. Someone needed to act, and I was capable of acting. So I did. It was not bravery, Professor. It was just math. The equation required a variable, and I was the only variable available. Green shook his head slowly. That is the most physicist answer I have ever heard, he said, and somehow it makes perfect sense. He stood and walked back toward his desk. For what it is worth, Miss Morgan, I think you are going to change the world far more with your research than you ever did with that bow and arrow. The universe has secrets that are waiting to be discovered, and I believe you are the one who will discover them. Katie smiled. I intend to try. Later that afternoon, Katie met Sam at their favorite coffee shop off campus. It was a small place with mismatched furniture and terrible lighting. But the coffee was good, and the owner had agreed not to let journalists inside, which made it one of the few places Katie could relax. So, Sam said, sliding into the booth across from her, I heard back from that tech company I interviewed with. They offered me a job. That is great, Katie replied. Are you going to take it? Sam shrugged. I do not know. I was also offered a position with the new Earth-Vethkai Technology Exchange. Apparently they need programmers who can help adapt alien software for human systems. That sounds incredible. It does, Sam agreed, but it would mean moving to the orbital station they are building, and I am not sure I am ready to leave Earth. Katie took a sip of her coffee. You should take it, she said. It is the opportunity of a lifetime, and you are exactly the kind of person they need up there. Someone smart, adaptable, and not easily intimidated by the unknown. Sam raised an eyebrow. Are you trying to get rid of me? Never, Katie said with a smile, but I am trying to make sure you do not waste your potential. You've been holding my hand through this whole thing, Sam, but I am okay now. It's time for you to have your own adventure. Sam was quiet for a moment. What about you? She asked. After your thesis defense, what are you going to do? You could have any job in the world, literally. Governments are lining up to offer you positions. Katie looked out the window at the street beyond, where people walked past without knowing that the most famous woman on Earth was sitting just a few feet away. The ambassador said they wanted to study us, she said slowly. He said they wanted to understand how a species like ours could produce individuals like me. But I think that is the wrong approach. They should not be studying us. We should be studying them. She turned back to her friend. I am going to propose a research initiative, a joint human-Vethkai project to study both our species together, to learn from each other, to understand what makes us similar and what makes us different. If we are going to be part of the galactic community, we need to understand that community, and they need to understand us. Sam stared at her. You are going to study the aliens who tried to destroy us? I am going to study everyone, Katie corrected. That is what scientists do. We observe, we analyze, we learn. The universe is full of mysteries, and I intend to solve as many of them as I can. Starting with the mystery of why a species that conquered 17 worlds decided to spare ours because of one fight. She finished her coffee and stood. There is something they are not telling us, Sam. Something about why they really came here, about why they offered that challenge instead of just destroying us. And I am going to find out what it is. 6 months later, Katie stood on the observation deck of the newly completed Orbital Research Station 1, looking down at the blue marble of Earth below. Beside her stood Ambassador Vethlar, his ancient eyes reflecting the planet's light. You have accomplished much in a short time, the ambassador observed. Your research initiative has already produced more insights into cross-species understanding than the Dominion achieved in millennia. We are a young species, Katie replied. We have a lot of catching up to do, but we learn fast. Yes, Vethlar said. You do. That is what makes you so remarkable and so dangerous. Katie turned to look at him. Is that why you really came to Earth? Not to conquer us, but to test us? The ambassador was silent for a long moment. General Keth Vorak believed humanity was a threat that needed to be eliminated, he said finally. But there were others on the High Council who believed differently, who believed that your species had potential that should not be wasted. The challenge was a compromise, a way to test your capabilities while giving you a chance to prove your worth. And if I had failed, then perhaps the universe would have lost nothing of value, Vethlar replied. But you did not fail. You proved that humanity is something the galaxy has not seen before. A species that combines adaptability with compassion, strength with wisdom, determination with humility. He turned to face her fully. You asked me once what we expected in return for our protection. I told you we wanted time. But the truth is more complicated. We are an old species, Katie Morgan. We have been conquering worlds for so long that we have forgotten how to do anything else. Your species has reminded us that there are other paths, that growth does not have to mean destruction, that strength can be measured in ways other than victory. Katie absorbed his words. You want us to teach you how to be different. We want you to help us remember what we have lost, the ambassador corrected. And in exchange, we will share everything we know, our technology, our history, our understanding of the universe. Together, perhaps we can build something neither of our species could build alone. Katie looked back out at the stars, at the infinite expanse of space that stretched in every direction. Somewhere out there were wonders beyond imagination, mysteries waiting to be solved, civilizations waiting to be met. And she was going to explore them all. Tell the High Council I accept their offer, she said, but I have one condition. Name it. I finish my thesis first. Professor Green will never let me live it down if I save the galaxy without getting my doctorate. Ambassador Vethlar made a sound that might have been laughter. You continue to surprise me, Katie Morgan. Good, she said with a smile. I plan to keep surprising you for a very long time. Far below, Earth turned slowly in the darkness, a small blue world that had nearly been destroyed and had instead become the beginning of something new. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, beings who had never heard of humanity were about to learn a lesson that the Vethkai had learned in a dusty arena in Nevada. Never underestimate a human, especially not the quiet ones, especially not the ones who seem to have nothing to prove, because those are the ones who will change everything.